What is the one game that everyone should experience at least once? This question has been on my mind for a long time, and my answer keeps changing. But I have finally found it, or at least I think I have. Let me clarify what I mean to answer the question correctly. When I say a game everyone should play, I don't mean a game everyone in the world must play. Instead, I mean a game that anyone with even the slightest interest in games should experience at least once. I won't include people who have no interest in games, because they may either love or hate whatever game they try for the first time. Their experience could be unpredictable. So this video is directed at people whose hobby is gaming, who play occasionally, or who at least have an idea of what a video game is. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I have played every game ever made, or that I'm an expert. I made this video entirely based on my own experience, and my thoughts are purely subjective. I realize many might disagree with me, and that's fine. Still, I want to share my opinion. So let's get to the point. The game that everyone should experience at least once. When I first thought about this, one of the first games that came to mind was The Last of Us Part 1. My first experience with The Last of Us was watching it rather than playing it. At the time, I didn't have a PS3, so I watched the entire game on YouTube like a TV series. I was captivated by it. The story, music, and characters really moved me. Later, when I got a PS4, I played the remastered version and enjoyed it immensely. Afterward, I played The Last of Us Part 2, and although I wasn't thrilled with the story, I loved the gameplay. Finally, I played the remake of the first game. In this video, I want to discuss the first game. The story starts on a very dramatic note and continues in a gripping way. With each sequence, you form a stronger bond with the characters and you start to care about them. Few works can achieve this level of emotional engagement. If a story makes you care about its characters, it's doing something right. And The Last of Us is one of those works. Joel and Ellie are two very well-written characters. The story opens with a traumatic event in Joel's life, and you feel its impact as much as he does. Eventually, Joel ends up taking a young girl named Ellie with him on a journey. During this journey, you get to know these characters better and become even more attached to them. The story sometimes makes you sad, sometimes makes you laugh, and sometimes makes you cry, and it has a powerful ending. The Last of Us tells a story that touches your heart, and I'll certainly miss the time I spent with Joel and Ellie. But I'm not here to find the game with the best story. For a game to be something everyone should experience at least once, it needs to have strong gameplay too. After all, this is a game, not a movie or a TV series. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying story is unimportant in games. In fact, I think games are the ultimate storytelling methods. But if the gameplay doesn't work, the core purpose of the game disappears. What makes a game is its gameplay. Now, I'm not saying The Last of Us has bad gameplay. Its mechanics are simple and effective. It has a smooth action system and very high quality animations. All the NPCs feel real. It has adequate gameplay for a story-driven game. After all, The Last of Us is a very realistic game. We can't expect characters to perform superhuman feats. If it had combat like God of War while maintaining this realism, it would cause ludonarrative dissonance, where the story and gameplay don't align. Uncharted games are an example of this. In Uncharted 4, you play as adventurer Nathan Drake, traveling the world to find a treasure, but you end up killing hundreds of enemies along the way. While playing, Nathan feels like a Terminator, yet in cutscenes he doesn't seem like a killer who just murdered 150 people. This creates a disconnect between the narrative and the gameplay. The Last of Us doesn't have this issue though. Its gameplay matches the story perfectly. You feel like you're playing as someone fighting to survive. What you see matches what you play. The gameplay is sufficient and enjoyable as needed. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is the gameplay is designed to support the story and only exists as much as the story allows. The story is most important thing in The Last of Us, and the gameplay is just an element to help convey it. Though this element is sufficient, I think that for a game to be something everyone should experience at least once, it should have a harmony between gameplay and narrative that enhances both. So, as much as I love The Last of Us and wholeheartedly recommend it to many people, I can't confidently say that it's the one game everyone should experience at least once.
How Adios, little brother.
Another game that comes to my mind is Red Dead Redemption 2. I could say similar things about this game as I did for The Last of Us. It's another game that's highly realistic, with stunning graphics and atmosphere, and the story blends well enough with the gameplay. It's incredibly immersive. You genuinely feel like you are playing as a cowboy in the Wild West. The game world feels alive, and as you explore and discover its world, it's as if you are really there. The game achieves this wonderfully. However, unlike The Last of Us, the story is frankly quite dull. The game takes a long time to really get going, and it takes even longer to finally release you into the open world. Except for Arthur Morgan, it doesn't make you care enough about the characters, so you don't feel invested in what happens to them. The constant nagging from Dutch was also very annoying. He's always coming up to Arthur and saying, "We need to do this," or "If we don't do that, our community won't survive." I bring $5,000 back to camp, and he still insists we need to rob a train because we are short on money. Fine, I say, and we go rob a train. We only get $300 and he'd be thrilled about it. I mean, I just brought in $5,000, why are we getting excited over $300? I'm really frustrated with Red Dead Redemption 2. I can't think of another game with this much potential that chose instead to force a mediocre story upon us. This game had the potential to be the greatest game ever, and it missed the mark. Such a beautiful world went to waste. I mean, I wish there had been character customization, for instance. And I'm not talking about changing clothes. I mean being able to create our own character. I wish we could establish or buy our own land, customize properties, build houses to rent out to others, buy a farm to work with livestock, hire workers. If we didn't pay them, they could betray us, steal our goods and flee. I wish we could open a stall to sell hunted animals in the marketplace, work as a day laborer, or even play as a sheriff. I wish we could hire an assassin, start our own gang, recruit new members. If we didn't treat our gang members well or give them enough share from heists, they could revolt. We could engage in intrigue, sabotage others behind their backs, and even backstab them. We could gain popularity with locals or bribe officials to run for office. We could have relationships with NPCs, maybe even charm someone's wife. Basically, I wish Red Dead Redemption 2 had been an RPG. All these ideas might sound difficult to achieve, but trust me, much smaller studios than Rockstar Games have managed to make games with similar elements. Rockstar Games could have done it here, but instead they opted to create a linear story-driven game in an open world. And that's why I am frustrated. Because Rockstar Games really has the capability to deliver these features. Honestly, it might have been even easier to make the game an RPG rather than obsess over so many small details. I mean, who cares if the horse's testicles react to cold or not? I should mention that if you played and enjoyed Red Dead Redemption 2, that's completely fine. I'm not trying to change your mind with these points. These are subjective opinions after all. My views shouldn't detract from your enjoyment of the game. However, I'm not the only one who struggled with it. Looking at Steam's global statistics, we see that only 43% of players made it past the introduction and reached the first camp. In other words, 57% of players didn't even get through the introduction, which takes about 2 hours to complete before you enter the open world. So a large portion of players didn't even experience the open world, and the game's completion rate is around 24%. If you loved the game, connected with the characters, or found the story impactful, there's nothing wrong with that. But remember, there are people who felt the same way I did. Ultimately, we're all trying to enjoy these games. By the way, I did enjoy Red Dead Redemption, of course. There were moments where the story moved me, and I appreciate the little details in the game. However, I just expected more from a game this big. Anyway, I have said enough about Red Dead Redemption 2. And I don't think it's the game that everyone should experience. At least in my opinion. When it comes to open world games, everyone has a favorite. Games where you can get completely lost in the world they've created. spending countless hours making real memories with these virtual characters. These games become more than just games. The moments you experience within them become a part of you, woven into your own memories. One of the best examples of this is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The Witcher is one of those games where I have spent days in its world, jumping from one adventure to the next, building friendship with the characters, caring about them, and feeling like I'm part of something much larger. Memories of hunting a gravehog in Velen, unraveling intrigues in Novigrad, searching for a djinn with Yennefer in Skellige to break a spell, and fighting alongside allies against the Wild Hunt at Kaer Morhen are memories I'll carry with me till the end of my life. The time I spent with Ciri, the character I became while searching for her, and seeing that the choices I made impacted the game, all these make The Witcher 3 special for me. To describe the game itself a bit, The Witcher 3 is an action RPG, meaning it doesn't fully fall under the traditional RPG category, but that's not a bad thing on its own. As an action RPG, it's incredibly rich in content. Beyond the captivating main storyline, the game is filled with well-thought side quests, some of which are more compelling than the main stories of other games. Even a simple side quest can reveal important lore or branch out into a more profound narrative. The Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine expansions released later are so full of content they could stand alone as separate games. Taking contracts for monster hunting is a fun activity on the side, and the thrill of treasure hunting for armor sets is equally engaging. The ability to develop your character, find new swords and armor, or have a blacksmith craft something for you keeps you engaged. Each region you explore and every event you experience feel like reading a novel. The unique soundtrack accompanies you throughout the game, enhancing the immersion. In short, Witcher 3 is a game I love deeply. On a side note, I often thought while playing The Witcher that it would be amazing to have a Lord of the Rings game like it. The game almost feels designed to be a Lord of the Rings game. Beyond the villain being clearly inspired by Sauron, the contracts Geralt undertakes often make me feel like I'm playing as a ranger, like Aragorn in his ranger days. I would sometimes imagine Kaer Morhen as Minas Tirith. To be clear, I adore the Witcher universe, and I'm not saying I'd prefer a Lord of the Rings game over it. I just wish there were a Lord of the Rings game with a similar structure. And yes, I guess it's now obvious that I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. However, as much as I love The Witcher and as much as I think it perfectly integrates gameplay with story, the game that I'm building up to isn't The Witcher. It's not because The Witcher is lacking or fails to appeal universally. It's because I have already found that game and I'll be talking about it later on. Right now I just wanted to mention these top tier games that kept me thinking. The Witcher 3 is a game I'd wholeheartedly recommend to everyone, but for the sake of the video, I have to let The Witcher go. If I didn't have to choose just one game, I'd gladly recommend The Witcher and several others on this list without hesitation.
Let's try it out then.
What is your biggest expectation from an open world game? Action-packed combat? Or perhaps a rich story? For me, the answer is the sense of exploration. That's probably what I love most about open world games. And one of the games that captures this feeling best is Elden Ring. The sense of exploration in Elden Ring is incredible. Even your 80th hour, it can still surprise you. The freedom it grants you in gameplay isn't something you find in many games. Everyone can have a unique experience with this game, shaping their own journey and purpose. You can be a lone wolf, wielding an ultra great sword, or a knight with a claymore and shield, or a mage overcoming obstacles with strategy rather than brute force. There's something in this game for everyone, no matter how you like to play. I love Souls games, and Elden Ring is truly a game that takes everything great about the Dark Souls and builds upon it. And I think it's a 10 out of 10. It's another game that makes you feel like you're part of something bigger, showing how a small, insignificant Tarnished can rise to become an Elden Lord and change the world. And that Tarnished is you. Weak, small, unimportant, but determined. So determined that even after falling 50 times, you stand back up again, This determination and resilience show that even things that appear small and insignificant can lead to big changes. At the start, you struggle against even the weakest enemies, but by the end, where you stand is proof that determination leads to success. And you achieved that. No one handed it to you. You fought for it, with hard work, resilience, and by learning from your mistakes. Each fall was a step toward getting stronger. This feeling leaves a sense of satisfaction that resonates even in the real world. I think there are certain prerequisites in order to enjoy some games. For example, someone who doesn't often play games might not enjoy turn-based JRPGs, but after playing more games, they might find themselves enjoying them eventually. It's not always the case, of course. It's just an observation, but I think this applies to Elden Ring too. Someone without much gaming experience might not enjoy Elden Ring or other Souls games. They might find the game confusing or too difficult. They might complain that the game doesn't tell them where to go or what to do. I do have friends who made these complaints and quit the game, but I would never want Elden Ring to tell me those things. If it told me what to do or where to go, I would definitely enjoy it less. For me, the important thing is discovering these on my own. Elden Ring might be more enjoyable for people like me who seek exploration, but for others it might be less engaging. For example, when fighting a boss, learning their moves, discovering their weaknesses, and using those weaknesses to defeat them is incredibly satisfying for me. But if you don't enjoy that, if you don't want to think through it, if you want to beat the game by just pressing the attack button, Elden Ring isn't for you. And that brings me to why I can't recommend Elden Ring to everyone. Because it's hard. But it's not difficult for the sake of being difficult. This challenge is crafted to give you a sense of achievement. In order to succeed, you need to learn how its world works, and anyone can master this game. It just takes time. That's why it's so good. But for the same reason, I can't say it's for everyone. I think if you don't have much gaming experience, you might want to set this game aside for later. But I could be mistaken, of course. There could be people whose first game was Elden Ring, and yet they loved it greatly. If you have played Elden Ring, feel free to share in the comments when you first played it and how much you enjoyed it. So I think that's enough for Elden Ring. As much as I love it deeply, I don't think that it's the game we are looking for. So let's continue. Maybe we are looking in the wrong place to find the game that everyone should experience at least once. Maybe that game isn't a large-scale, story-heavy, complex and visually impressive title. Perhaps we should look at simpler games, like Inside. This game is unique. It tells an intriguing story without any dialogue. The gameplay is extremely simple, with just movement and interaction buttons. Yet you can complete the entire game with this limited control scheme. It offers roughly a 3-hour experience with an incredibly captivating storytelling style. You are just trying to move forward, solving simple yet high-quality puzzles along the way. Every area of the game is visually satisfying and builds your curiosity about the story. Trying to figure out what's happening in this dystopian world while experiencing it as a child creates a unique feeling. Since we're playing as a child, the gameplay is designed accordingly, focusing on sneaking and avoiding enemies. The visuals and atmosphere are stunning as well. Inside is a game you can complete in one sitting, and you don't need prior gaming experience. It's designed to appeal to everyone. In this way, it comes close to being the game we are searching for in the title of this video. It might even be ahead of other candidates. With its simplicity and captivating visuals, Inside can appeal to both hardcore and casual gamers alike. However, as enjoyable as it is, I don't think it's impactful enough to be considered a game that everyone must experience at least once. While Inside is an interesting experience, it doesn't quite promise the depth that would leave a lasting impression. At least, that's my perspective. So let's continue our journey to find our game. Another game I've been thinking about is Papers, Please. It's an incredibly strong game, both in terms of gameplay and narrative. You play as a border control officer, deciding who can pass and who must be turned away. Papers, Please confronts players with morally challenging decisions, where every choice truly affects the game. You should decide if you should let someone through whose documents don't match but who seems like a good person, or you may have to spot fake documents and deny people entry. Naturally, you also bear the consequences of your decisions. The game starts simple but evolves into an ethically and emotionally challenging experience. Some refugees beg to save their lives, yet you may be forced to turn them away. These moments test your conscience and moral values. Additionally, the game places the responsibility of supporting a family on you. Your earnings go towards your family's rent, food, and heating, and any mistakes you make result in salary deductions. If you don't make enough for heating, for example, your family members might get sick. In this way, the game offers a uniquely empathetic view of how bureaucracy and oppressive regimes affect lives. The low pixel graphics also add to the game's dark atmosphere. Papers, Please is not just a document checking game. It's an experience that delves into the depths of bureaucracy, power, and human nature. It shows how governments can interfere with individuals' lives. By casting us as a border officer and turning us into a small cog in a larger machine, the game forces us to confront the reality that each of us is a part of the bureaucratic system. Papers, Please is a rare experience that leaves you alone with your own conscience. But it's not quite impactful enough. I mean, it's certainly impactful, but not enough to be a game everyone must experience. So, I guess Papers, Please isn't the game we are looking for either. Let's keep going. Look, there are tons of great games I haven't even mentioned. I won't go through each one here because I don't want this video to be too long. In this year, I don't think I need to explain why God of War is an amazing game, or why Half-Life was a revolutionary title, or why Minecraft is one of the most unique games ever made. These are well-known things, and plenty of content has already been made about them. And I'm sure all of these games, whether I mentioned them or not, mean more to some of us than they do to others. And I think it's time to talk about a game that means much more to me personally. I want to make it clear that I loved playing every game I have talked about so far. Some I loved more, some a little less, but none of them impacted me as much as the one I'm about to discuss. I think we have finally reached the game at the heart of this video's theme. The one game everyone should experience at least once. But before I get into it, I want to address something. If you have come this far in the video, you may be expecting this game to be a Zelda game. But I have to disappoint you, I have never played a Zelda game. I have watched hours of gameplay by streamers, and it's undeniably an impressive game, that's for sure, but I haven't personally experienced it, so I can't discuss it in detail. I'm sorry if that's disappointing. Anyway, let's finally get to the main subject of this video: death. What kind of perspective can a game give you about death? In games, death is typically a respawn mechanic. At first glance, games don't seem like the ideal mediums to explore themes of mortality. But when I think about it, I'm not sure if anything could convey this experience better than What Remains of Edith Finch. The feelings it evokes are so powerful that they allow you to empathize even in real life. I don't think I have experienced anything more impactful in the past decade. No game or movie or music has affected me as deeply as the events I went through in this game. I should warn you that there are spoilers ahead, so if you haven't played the game, you might want to finish it before watching further. What Remains of Edith Finch is a game about death. You play as Edith Finch, a young girl reliving the final moments of her deceased relatives, and you realize that Edith is the last remaining Finch. We discover that the Finch family believes they are cursed. Each member of the family has died tragically, none from natural causes. It's become so normal for them that when they move to a new place, the first thing they build is a cemetery. Many of these deaths are bizarrely tragic. It's as if death has a personal vendetta against the Finches. For instance, 11-year-old Calvin dreamed of flying and loved swinging higher and higher on his swing set. One day, he decided to make his dream real by jumping off the swing, only to fall to his death over the edge of the cliff. Another Finch, Walter, tried to escape this curse by living in a bunker for 30 years, repeating the same routine every day. One day, tired of this existence, he finally decides to go outside, only to hit by a train within a minute. The game allows you to experience these memories firsthand, showcasing the brilliant union of storytelling and gameplay. For instance, let's look at Lewis's story. Lewis, another Finch, works in a fish cannery, performing the repetitive task of decapitating fish. Bored with his life and his work, he creates a world in his mind, and the game splits into two parts. On one side, you are playing out Lewis's imaginary world, while on the other, you are continuing his monotonous task with the fish. This dual gameplay allows you to control his internal world with the one hand, while using the other to keep up with the fish. Eventually, you get so absorbed in his fantasy that you start resenting the fish task. When Lewis finally decides to leave reality to live in his imagined world and takes his own life, you understand that he did it to escape the unbearable reality and live fully in his mind. As I played through these memories of deceased relatives, I started to fear that something would eventually happen to Edith too. After each story, I'd wonder if it was now Edith's turn. At one point, I turned the camera down and realized Edith was pregnant. And I don't know why, but I had a feeling that she might die in childbirth. At the end of the game, when this feeling turns out to be true, it felt like I was facing death right alongside her. And then it was her turn. Death came for her. The last Finch alive had been taken. Edith Finch had now become just another memory. As I reached the end, those memories had become my own as well. I felt very sad when the game ended, but it wasn't a dark or despairing sadness. It was almost peaceful, as if the game had comforted me about death and helped me confront my own fears. Death has always been something I think about a lot, and I used to have a very bleak perspective on it. Someday all my loved ones will be gone, and I couldn't accept that before. But after this game, I am no longer spending my remaining time fearing death. This game taught me to fill my limited time with the things I care about. I wanted to create more memories with those I care about and work toward my dreams. Life is kind of like an RPG game with only one life. You progress, make choices, meet new characters, develop yourself, and acquire skills that make you stronger. The choices you make shape the ending, and eventually the game ends. In the end, I don't want to look back with regrets. I want to feel content with the life I've built. That's why I have started doing things I used to put off, like learning how to code or starting this channel. In the light of everything I have said, I truly believe What Remains of Edith Finch is the game everyone should experience at least once. With its approachable gameplay, captivating atmosphere, and brilliant storytelling, no matter what kind of games you typically play, try this unforgettable 2-hour experience. I'm sure it will leave a lasting impact on you. Thank you so much for watching.